If you've ever felt like a chicken with your head cut off, just running around, not really sure if you're getting anything done that you should be, but also feeling like you're working super hard, irregardless, this podcast is for you. I'm excited. We're talking about ADHD and we're talking to the leading ADHD specialist in the world. Dr. Ari Tuckman. Dr. Tuckman is a clinical psychologist and he is internationally recognized as the expert on ADHD. With over 20 years of experience, he has helped countless individuals better understand and manage ADHD. He is an author, he has multiple books, and a new book coming out right now on ADHD. If you are curious, if maybe you have it or a loved one, or you just want to know more about how to be productive when you're feeling super scatterbrained, I am excited for you to listen to today's podcast. But just like always, I don't want you to sit and passively listen or watch. I want you to do something today, something small to make yourself proud, whether that is getting rid of 21 things in your home that you no longer need that you can put in the trash or donate. It can be old receipts or gum wrappers or expired food, or you're doing the dishes, or you're putting away that load of laundry, or you're going for a walk and moving your body. What can you do to make yourself proud while learning some really cool things, also getting stuff done? Because you, my friend, are amazing. So without further ado, let's meet Dr. Tuckman. Welcome, Dr. Tuckman. I'm so excited to have you here.
I am super psyched to be here. I think this is going to be really cool. This is our first chance to actually really hang out. So I'm really excited to do it.
I'm excited too. The first time I met you was at a CHAD conference a few
Hmm.
years ago. And even before I met you in person, everyone was talking about you. And this is honestly what someone said to me. They said, "Have you met Ari yet? He's our leader." And I was like our, she's just like the ADHD community. He's our
Wow.
he's our king. He's our leader. And so I didn't know if you knew that's how people thought of you.
Wow. Hopefully a benevolent leader, right? She didn't put an adjective, a descriptor on that. So we'll assume the best.
I think it's because you are obviously like so engaged in the community. You are like the leading ADHD expert. I would love you to tell my audience how you got into, I mean, do you have ADHD? Is this just something you found consistently with your clients? How is this your special? How are you our
Yeah.
king?
Yeah, it's sort of it's a funny story, but I think it kind of speaks to sort of what life brings you and what you do with it. So, when I came out of grad school in the late 90s, I was kind of trying to figure out, like, what am I doing here? Where is my place in the world? Who am I going to see? And I sort of fumbled around and, like people do. But the psychiatrist who ran the group practice I was with said, I got these adults with ADHD and I'm putting them on medication and like it helps, but really kind of they could use like kind of practical life skills, right? And at the time I was like, well, I have all openings, so sure, I'll see anyone. Like axe murderers, sure, I'm free at 2. So but the thing of it is, it was just a great fit, right? It's a great fit for how I like to work. And at the time, ADHD in adults was really sort of an underserved population. Like it's different now, like in 2025, than it was in the late 90s and early 2000s. So there was this like big group of people who were just not being well served by the other clinicians. And it was just like a perfect storm kind of a moment. But what's funny about it is, as I've sort of reflected back on the people in my life over various points in time, and then have had contact with some people since then, like so many of the people in my past have ADHD. So like clearly, like I gravitate towards people with ADHD even before I knew that that's what it was.
I love that. I mean, I wasn't diagnosed till I was 45, and I think a lot of my listeners, I hear and I see in my comments over and over, I'm not sure if I have ADHD, but man, does this resonate
Sure.
with me. And if you're listening to the Clutterbug podcast, you're probably struggling with just managing the daily life stuff. So I would love if you could, I mean, you're not going to diagnose a horde of people listening, but
Nope.
is there sort of, does it show up differently in adults? And yes,
Hmm.
tell my listeners, is there something that they could be like, this is a takeaway? Or if you're chronically overwhelmed, do the solutions and tactics and tools that you use for ADHD kind of help everyone so it doesn't matter? Question mark.
Sure. And that part's definitely true, right? In the sense that good ADHD friendly strategies, they just tend to be really good strategies. And probably most people would benefit from them. Now, the difference is not everybody needs quite those strategies, right? So, folks who don't have ADHD can do better with certain things that folks with ADHD won't benefit from in the same kind of. So, it goes one direction more than the other direction, if that makes sense. But the key to ADHD is, or this question of like, oh, I wonder if I might have it, is it's about like a consistent pattern of struggle across time and across situations, right? If it's more variable, like I was fine until, I got this job and now I'm struggling, but before that I was okay, then it's something, but it's probably not ADHD at that point. But it's that it just sort of, it's always there, right? Like it shows up in that job that you hated, but it also showed up in the job that you loved. When you're really overwhelmed, let's say you've got a newborn who's just crushing you every night, right? Obviously, that's a hard time. But even before you had a newborn, right? Still, it was more of a struggle than it felt like it should be, right? Those are the sort of tip offs that, like, maybe this is more than just I'm not good at being organized.
Hmm. I honestly had no idea that I had ADHD. I should have. The signs were there, but I think when you're living in this state, this is your norm. And I also think, I don't know nothing from nothing, but maybe sometimes this could be hereditary. So I saw
Yep.
these traits with my mom as well. So I grew up thinking this frantic, never knowing where anything is, always lost,
Sure.
always late, always just yeah, chaotic was normal.
Yeah.
Today I forgot to take my medication because I was called out to work in the middle of the night, and I spent
Ugh.
20 minutes looking for my coffee. I have a very tidy home. I'm just
Mm.
wandering, and then I forgot I was in the room, and then I'm like, what am I doing? And then for some reason I was moving plants outside, and I'm like, what am I? I'm looking for my coffee, and and I'm like, I didn't take my meds today.
Ah,
So it isn't even like a thunderbolt of difference. It's these little subtle things where everything just seems a little bit harder than it is for other people.
yeah.
No.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. But it's also this family thing is exactly right. That it's sort of like, this is just what we do, right? This is what Hendersons are like, or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Like whatever your name
exactly.
is, like well, it's what some of them are like, but it also doesn't have to be, or it's like, oh, my family's Greek, or we're from the Midwest. This is what we do, right? Like that's a thing that it sort of fits, right? Except also like there's very much genetics to ADHD. And it definitely is a thing that like kids get diagnosed because pediatricians and teachers are more sort of aware of
Mm.
ADHD. And then one of the parents goes, oh boy, yeah, that sounds familiar. And sometimes they talk about themselves and sometimes they're talking about their spouse. But yeah, you usually don't have to look that hard through the family tree to find some other people who you would bet $50 probably also have ADHD.
I have to take a second to thank today's podcast sponsor, Caraway Cookware. I've treated myself to new Caraway pots and pans. They are gorgeous. I have both the off-white and the blue set, and I love them. Not only do they cook really evenly, they're super fast and easy to clean, but I love that they are non-toxic. I used to have a bunch of Teflon cookware, and what I didn't realize is that just one scratch in that and it's releasing a ton of microplastics and toxins. It only takes 2.5 minutes for a non-stick pan to overheat and release toxins even without a scratch. And 97% of Americans have PFAs, toxic chemicals from non-stick cookware in their blood. These are all things I didn't know. Listen, it is time for you to upgrade your cookware to something that's healthy and also easy to use and easy to clean, and I recommend Caraway. Take a second and visit carawayhome.com/clutterbug, and you can take an additional 10% off your next purchase. This deal is exclusive just for our listeners, so visit carawayhome.com/clutterbug or use the code clutterbug at checkout. Caraway, non-toxic cookware made modern. Okay, I definitely want to talk about your new book, The ADHD Productivity Manual, and I want to
Mm-hmm.
talk about strategies for my listeners to help them become more productive. I am such a productivity junkie, but before I
Yeah.
jump into this, because if I'm going to forget, so I have
Okay.
to just say, I was actually talking to a friend last week, and she was talking about a family member of hers who has a small child diagnosed with ADHD, and the kid's kind of like always getting in trouble and doing little things and kind of being annoying. And my point is, I I felt this at my core, and I felt so bad for this little child that I don't even know, because I think something that adults don't understand is when you're a child with ADHD, you're constantly being corrected. You're
Yes.
constantly being corrected, and you're doing things that are annoying, and you're not paying attention, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't think there's like a malice there. There's not like, I can speak for myself. I wasn't trying to be a bad kid, and yet I was always bad and
Yeah.
always in trouble, whether it was at school or at home or at a friend's house. And I think that psychologically really does some damage.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really passionate. I'm new to the ADHD community because I was recently diagnosed, but I feel like, what's the solution here, doctor? If we know of
Yeah.
children who are in this, or if you were a child yourself constantly corrected, even as an adult, we hold that. And I think it changes us.
Yeah.
I would love to hear your input on this at all.
Yeah. So this is incredibly important because the thing of it is, you are absolutely right. Kids who are off task, kids who are not doing the thing that an adult thinks they should be doing, is going to get way more comments and corrections. And as the adult in the room, whether it's a parent or a teacher, if we're generally holding it together, right, we're not overwhelmed, we're not stressed out, we're not exhausted by our own life, then hopefully we do it in a reasonable kind of a way. But also, adults have their own struggles, right? Like, we're not always perfect, or maybe the first 7 times were pretty good, but not on the eighth time, right? So those kids do get a lot more of those kind of comments, and it starts out maybe as, "Why did you do that thing?" But eventually it becomes, "What is wrong with you for doing that thing?" Right? And that is either implicitly or explicitly stated, right? So it affects how you see yourself. But also, like, classmates and other kids, like, kids don't want to sit next to the kid who gets in trouble.
Mhm.
Kids don't want to sit next to the kid who's talking in class and then gets them in trouble for talking in class, right? So, like, there's social consequences to this as well from peers. So, like, this is where the psychological, or this is where the neurological becomes psychological. It affects how you see yourself. It affects how you approach challenges. It affects how you relate to other people, right? You carry that with you into adulthood. And even if you take medication that, let's say, is miraculous in its benefits, there's still these lifelong lessons of who you are and what is your place in the world and what can you ask of others. And if you layer being a woman on top of that, like that's even more. Or if you layer other sort of demographic qualities onto that, it's even more. So like it does become complicated and it does become messy. And
Mhm.
like this is why as a psychologist I am busy all day, right? Because like this is the stuff we talk about. We don't change your ADHD, but hopefully we change how you feel about it, how you understand it, and how you feel about yourself.
Yeah, that for me, getting the diagnosis was so important because it was about the self forgiveness. It was about like, oh, it's not like you're a bad person and you don't have enough self discipline and you're
Mm,
blah, blah, blah. You have a real medical condition. But I see people, I know a lot of my listeners who are listening right now maybe had this same experience of making a lot of mistakes and being constantly corrected as a kid. And now, as an adult, there's a lack of trust in yourself.
yeah,
There is this huge, like, I'm just going to mess it up. I don't even know where to start. I'm going to do the wrong thing anyways. And you're either like, you went full, I'm going to just be bad anyways because I am, and you're off the rails, or
mm,
you're constantly, so nervous to make a mistake that you almost have this like perfectionist thing that comes out there like, well, I'm going to
yeah,
have to, and I think a lot of my listeners might be falling into that. I know for myself there's a real lack of trust as well in like, ooh, am I capable
yeah.
of this? Do I need a safety net to make sure I'm not going to totally mess this up at all times? It's tough. So you've got
Well,
solutions.
yeah. Although let me just comment on that really quick. So, you know, anxiety and depression lie to us, right? They tell us things are worse than they are, right? Either bad things are going to happen in the case of anxiety, or bad things did happen and, you should feel bad about them in the case of depression, right? Anxiety and depression exaggerate the reality. But here's the problem. When you've had untreated ADHD all those years, it's not an inaccurate reading of your track record, and it's therefore not a sort of pessimistic projection of what the future holds, right? There's this sort of feeling of like, yeah, there's pretty good odds this goes off the rails despite hard effort and good intentions and setting everything right. It's still no guarantee that I'm going to do the right thing at the right moment. So, if you've been diagnosed and treated for anxiety and depression, it probably helped like somewhat, like I'm sure it was somewhat helpful, but it didn't change your sort of fundamental batting average, right? It didn't make you more consistent, more predictable, more effective. So, it's at that point, it's kind of empty optimism to feel like I got it. This is going to be fine.
You're right. Yeah. It really is because we're going to continually make mistakes and do silly things and mess stuff up and forget where our coffee is.
Hmm.
And yeah. How
Yeah.
do we live a more normal life? I was reading your book
Yeah.
and I'm so glad you actually talk about medication being a tool
Hmm.
because so many people are really reluctant to take a stimulant. And
Yeah.
I'm as a person I used to struggle with addiction. I also was like, ooh, a stimulant. No, I've
Mm.
done some cocaine, doctor, in my
Right.
past.
Right.
And I was
Right.
like, oh God, I don't want to take something
Yeah.
like that. I don't even take
I'll buy
aspirin.
cocaine from the drug dealer on the corner, but the highly
Yeah,
regulated,
I know.
carefully processed medication from the pharmacist, I don't trust it.
Totally. Well, I won't now but that was almost like,
Right.
I don't want to get addicted. I have an addictive
Sure.
personality. I know this about myself. I don't want to take
Yes.
something that's going to get me high. That was my first thought. And the
Hmm.
moment I took ADHD medication, it was insane because guess what? I didn't get high. In
Yeah.
fact, I got quiet.
Mm,
in my brain. And it was unnerving, and I just cried, and it was like, what? And also, man, did it make life a little bit easier.
yeah. Yeah.
So I'm so
I
glad
mean,
you talk about that in your book as one of the tools. You talk about that right in the beginning because there is a resistance, I feel like, for some reason. And I
yeah.
do think it is a wonderful tool.
And I mean, that's the thing about medication is, I mean, first of all, I'm a psychologist. I don't write prescriptions. I don't work for a pharma company. I have nothing to gain from medication, right? Financially. But the thing about it is, absolutely, we should be concerned about substance abuse, right? For kids, adolescents, adults. Like we should be. Substance abuse causes many, many problems nobody wants. But the reality, despite this sort of idea that's out there, the reality is this: untreated ADHD, especially kids who have more of the hyperactive impulsive symptoms, is a significant risk factor for substance abuse problems. It is untreated ADHD that's the risk factor. Kids and adolescents with ADHD who are put on stimulant medication have, at worst, the same risk and probably actually a reduced risk.
Mm.
Adults with ADHD in recovery are more likely to stay sober when they're treated with stimulant medication. So, my smart ass line on this is, if stimulant medication is really so addictive, why do so many of my clients forget to take it? Nobody
Like,
forgets their heroin. No heroin addict gets to mid afternoon and says, wait a second, uh, I don't think I took my heroin today, right? Does not happen. And yet, if you can forget your medication, it is dead proof that you're not addicted to it.
yes. Yeah. Oh my God, that's so good. Because no, it doesn't get you high and it doesn't get you real low like a Valium. It is a very subtle quieting of the background noise in your brain is what I feel, which
Mm-hmm.
allows me to stay more on task because I'm not as distracted by all this noise in the background. It literally just turns off the TV for me, and maybe everyone's
Mm-hmm.
experience is different. It almost turns off the TV that's in the background that I didn't know was on.
Yeah.
And at first, it was that's my experience. Then I switched to a different medication, and I cried to my husband. I was like, I'm gonna be so boring. I went from a Vyvanse to Concerta. My psychiatrist recommended switching it because I was still having a lot of issues with forgetfulness and
Yeah.
distractibility. And so she switched me slowly to a slow dose of Concerta and then raised it each week. And I cried when I went from one dose to the next because I'm like, I'm going to be so boring. I'm not going to be able to be creative anymore. I cried to her. She's like, you
Yeah.
just, can you give it a couple
Uh,
weeks? How ridiculous was I? Because your brain adjusts, and it's
yeah.
not that big of a deal.
But also,
Weird.
if it did make you boring, then that's clearly not the right dose, right? Like something's not right. This is not where we're going for, right? It's like you still want to be you, but a bit
Yes.
more consistent, a bit more planful, a bit more on top of things. So, like, these sort of concerns or these horror stories about medication are usually kind of like worst case scenarios, but usually they're because it wasn't managed well and something needed to be different. And what I kind of say two things when it comes to medication. One is, if you can't tell whether or not it's working, then it's not working, right? You shouldn't have to think too hard to figure out what it's doing. But the other thing that I say is, if you feel terrible on it, it's not right. Go talk to your prescriber, right? Like you shouldn't suffer for it.
Mm. Yeah, it's so good. I feel like I feel good. I feel I'm on the right dose. So I wanted to talk about that because I do think there's a kind of stigma, and hopefully my listeners,
Yeah.
whether they have children who have ADHD or themselves, they're just really reluctant. I would love to. Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I do
Yep.
think it is just one of many tools. And let's talk about other tools. I love that you wrote a book on productivity because that's an issue. Tell me a
Yep.
little bit about the book and why you wrote it and how it can help.
So I've been specializing in ADHD for 25 years. This is like the thing I do all day when I'm not on podcasts and hanging out with fun people like you. Well, I'm hanging out with other fun people. We're just not recording it. So, um, I've had a lot of conversations about getting things done, or probably, as it turns out, not actually getting things done. So, um, and the thing of it is, there's a lot that goes into productivity, right? There are a lot of different things that can affect in this moment on this task. Do the gears engage and something happens, or do they not quite engage and it doesn't happen? So, on the one hand, if you've struggled with productivity and sometimes you don't know why, like this is why, right? Because it's hard. It's not super easy. And it's not just that you like can't figure it out, but also we can figure it out, right? Like there are things that we can take a look at to say, okay, what about this and what about that? And what are the different places to look and the things to consider? What are the things that we can do to make certain things a little bit more likely? Um, so like that's what this book is. It's everything I've learned about how to help folks with ADHD get stuff done over the last 25 years, covering everything from like where it begins with like how exactly is it that ADHD makes it harder to get stuff done. I talk about like setting up a good work environment. I talk about like medication and exercise and stuff like that. um, I talk about kind of using good tools and systems, so like to-do lists and planners and things like that. I talk about the kind of psychology of it, right? That sort of mindset stuff, and how do we deal with being overwhelmed or kind of ambiguity where like I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. How's this supposed to end up? Or perfectionism and all that kind of like mindset stuff. And that I even get into kind of the social part of it, of how productive do you actually need to be? And someone wants you to do something, should you actually do it? And if you're not going to do it, how do you have a good conversation with them so it doesn't look like an ADHD moment? So it's like all of that stuff is what I cover in this book.
I'm excited to dig deeper into it. I am, and a lot of my ADHDers are all about the give us the hack, change my life
Yes.
with one hack. And I was reading your book and you're
Yes.
like, this isn't that. Okay.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do hard work. And I groaned. I groaned, Dr.
Right.
Tuckman,
I
because I
know.
was like,
Bearer of bad news.
ooh, I don't want to have to be like structured and I don't want to have to go to bed earlier. Let's be
Right.
real though. That's a big part of it, isn't it? It's just putting on our big girl or boy pants
Mm.
and having to set up systems and do the work to make life easier.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's a bummer, right? Some of this stuff is boring. But the good news is that it does tend to be helpful. You absolutely don't have to be perfect. You shouldn't become a boring person about it. But really, really, it's it's about living a life that means something to you, right? In that when you're not managing your ADHD well, or whatever we're not managing well, when things are not getting done, too much of life feels like avoiding the cost, right? You're avoiding someone being mad at you, some problems, something, someone yelling about something, or you getting down on yourself because yet again you dropped the ball. And like just avoiding negatives is not inspiring, right? That just gets you to zero. That really the goal of this book, and just sort of in general in terms of how I think about this stuff, is how do you live a life that's worth living? Like a good life where you have time for yourself, for the people you care about, for the projects that are meaningful and interesting that you can be passionate about, right? That's really what we're talking about here. And that doesn't mean being like everybody else. And it doesn't mean doing every single thing, right? It might mean cutting some things loose. It might mean sometimes letting other people be disappointed because, sorry, man. But, living a life that you can feel good about yourself in.
Yeah, so good. Also, I'm going to put you on the spot right now. Are there, I mean, you've had hundreds, you probably had thousands of clients. Are there certain strategies that you've seen? Everybody's different, but seen that have actually helped? Like if you were like, this tool or this
Hmm.
thing or these a few things have actually been effective to help people getting more done or feeling better about the stuff they
Hmm.
are getting done. It isn't about always doing more, it's doing
Right,
more of the
right.
right things, perhaps. Are there
Yes.
certain tools or strategies that do seem to work for more people than others?
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of strategies at work. I think what I would say is, and I literally had this conversation like 2 hours ago with a client, is sometimes one thing alone is not enough, right? That like one thing doesn't sort of tip the balance, either because it wasn't necessarily the right thing.
Mm,
But even if it was, where you're like, yeah, this is helpful, there could be other things that are still kind of jamming you up, right? So sometimes you need to try a few different things. I think in general, in sort of a simplistic way, um, folks with ADHD have a more sort of like direct line to the environment, right? So, in other words, stuff that's going on around you is going to shoot into your attention a whole lot more than someone who doesn't have ADHD, who has a better ability to just be like, whatever. What was I doing? Right. So, one of the sort of implications of that, which is commonly said, but it's harder to actually make ourselves do it, is like get rid of, like minimize, push away as much as you can the things that are going to derail you. Now, that doesn't
mhm.
mean that you put your kids into foster care, because like they got to stick around. But at least maybe you try to get stuff done when they're not like, clawing
Yeah.
away at you or something. But like just doing the things that you can do to minimize the distraction so you don't have to count on your attention to sort of push them away.
That's so good. So decluttering, I mean, it had a
Hmm.
profound impact on my life. It was drastic when I started decluttering and organizing my spaces. Suddenly, every area of my life improved. And I think that is because I wasn't just bombarded constantly by everything
Hmm.
around me. So I was able to focus more. And I was also, it almost became fun for me because as a person with ADHD, what I've realized is I need like that gamification. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's like dopamine, give it to me, little fun things.
yeah,
So when I could find 21 things to go that day, or I could fill one trash bag or one donation box, it it gave me a feeling of completion and excitement. I was proud of myself because I did like these
yeah,
little jobs, and I saw the added benefits it was giving me outside of just that. So even though my
yeah,
finances were a disaster, my relationships weren't great, I was
yeah,
like a hot mess sandwich in every way. When I started focusing on my home and my environment, I guess, and doing these little projects to get that under control and less distracting, it really did help me in so many other areas of my life. And
yeah,
I felt like that was the easiest place to start because, like, I could run on a treadmill for 20 minutes and my butt would look the same. I would just be kind of
yeah.
tired.
I know.
I need immediate
Yes,
results. I need
yes.
to see what I've done. And so,
But I think this is really important because, okay, fine, one donation bag didn't revolutionize your life, but noticing it, right? Really noticing and giving yourself a bit of credit, right? That is incredibly important because the thing is, guaranteed you notice everything you didn't do, right? All the misses, all the negatives, all the screw ups, you're definitely noticing those, right? So you need to be a little bit intentional, not in some fake, bogus, like too positive kind of a way, but like in a valid way of like, you know what? This is good. Like I am on my way. Like I am taking active steps to make things better for myself. So absolutely. And like, the whole exercise thing, I think it's a good example of a lot of stuff, but like you're absolutely right. Like you could kill yourself at the gym for a month and you probably don't look that different, right? So like I'm going to get ripped or I'm going to lose weight, or 40 years from now my doctor is going to tell me my heart health looks pretty good. Terrible motivator, not at all interesting. The thing to be excited about when it comes to working out, let's say, is after I work out, I will have a better day today. Like in the
Mm.
hours afterwards, I am going to feel better. I'm going to get more done, or I'm going to be in a better mood later, or I'm going to sleep better tonight. More immediate benefit, way more motivating.
And I think you could probably take that to everything you do that you want to get done. Like what is the like hit that's going to come from that immediately? It could just be I'm going to feel really proud of myself. But I think that's also why we have to break things down into smaller chunks. I
Hmm.
notice a lot of people who are like, I have to clean my whole house. Oh, it's crazy. And then if it's like, well, what if you just do the dishes?
Yeah. Start
Yeah.
there, see what happens.
And then you feel really good because you check. And I need an
Mm.
actual checklist, man. I need to like, yeah, get it, girl. Check that
Yeah.
thing off. But I think I intuitively learned this. Instead of looking at the mountain, I had to look down at my feet and celebrate each tiny step
Yeah.
for a number of reasons. One is to get me that little like yay hit, I'm a good girl, but also to kind of retrain myself that I am capable and I'm not going to fail at everything, because going from a child with ADHD undiagnosed, failing at everything constantly over
Yeah.
and over again, I just always had the expectations that I could never do anything right, even as an adult. And so I had to
Yeah.
be really mindful about celebrating each win in order to build up my confidence, but also to create that motivation. Because for me, like motivation is excitement. That's what it is. It's
Hmm.
excitement. You're excited.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
motivated means you're excited to do something. And how can you be excited if you think you're going to suck at it, or you think you're going to
Right.
fail, or you're not going to finish? It's almost impossible. And it's really
Yep.
hard to be productive when you're not motivated. So it all starts at that little, like, you need that spark.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it absolutely does. It totally does. So wherever it is that you can find that spark, how am I going to feel about this afterwards? When I'm putting that last item in that donation bag, how does that feel? Or if I clear off my desk, how does that feel to look at it? And to really sort of, I kind of call it feeling the future, right? Like connect to that future feeling of what that will be like. And some of it is even like, even if nobody else knows, I know. Like, I know
Hmm.
this is a thing I intended to do. And like, look at that. I did it.
Yeah. So, for my listeners who are working real jobs and possibly have ADHD, let's talk about that, because
Mm.
I've forgotten how much it sucks to have a job. I got fired from probably every job I've ever had. And then I started my own business. And, lo and behold, hey, I could create my own schedules. I could be
Hmm.
flexible. I could work when I was feeling pumped. I could take time off when I wasn't. But then my brain got bored and I decided, Cass, you need a side job. And I got
Right.
myself a part time job. So now I have to go to work and I have bosses, and it's very like, this is the what we do, step 1, then step 2, then step 3. And while I love the job, I also hate the job.
Hmm.
Ari, help me here. So, when we're in a situation like we can't just be our own bosses and create our own schedules and go with the flow and be impulsive and fun when we want to and stay in bed for days when we need to, we got to like do the big girl stuff. How do we be productive and a normal member of society in those situations
Yeah.
when it feels so hard?
I mean, the thing of it is, even if when you're working for yourself, I mean, you still have expectations and demands from others, customers, clients, whatever, vendors, but even just from yourself, right? Like there's still things to be done. You would have more flexibility about how you do it, but that flexibility cuts both ways. Like in some ways it is easier to just have a job with the boss, because like they're going to notice if you don't show up in the morning and if you didn't get them the thing by 1. So like those shorter time frames do make it easier. The challenge of it is that consistency, right? Working on Monday, getting stuff done on Tuesday, getting more done on Wednesday, right? Like I see where this is going, right? So and it turns out there's like 4 weeks in a month and there's like 52 weeks in a year, and damn it, every one of those. So,
Does it ever end? Ever?
right, exactly. So it is a challenge. And I think that, you know, if you have ADHD and you're less consistent about your performance, it then becomes more important to kind of manage some of the social impacts of that, and not just what you do, but how is it perceived by others, right?
Mm,
And I think in these cases, then it's important to show your coworkers or your boss or whoever, right, to show them that you're taking it seriously. Like you are working hard at it, you are trying, even if it's not always obvious on the outcome. But at least it's not like if they think you're not doing a great job on the outcome because you're kind of half assing or you're a slacker, you're in trouble, right? That
mm,
is a problem. So I don't know. I sort of came up with this line: people want good outcomes, but they will settle for good intentions,
mm.
right? So either say, hey, I know I was supposed to get you that thing by noon. I got caught up in other things, but I promise you, like, it is important to me. I'm going to do my best to get it to you, rather than just going radio silent because you feel embarrassed. And then they start thinking, that slacker, she doesn't even care, or what, right? They all sorts of crazy ideas. I think, and I talk about this in the book as well, but like making it obvious that you're using your tools and systems, right? So if someone says, hey, can you like put this thing together and get it to me? If you just say, okay, and then you like walk away, right? If you hit the mark, great, whatever. But the problem is if you don't do it, they're going to think to themselves like, God, she didn't even like take it seriously enough to write it down. What the hell? Right. Whereas if you're like,
Yeah.
hold on a sec, let me scribble that down. Or I'm in the middle of something, send me an email, tell me exactly what you need. Right. Like you show the other person that you're taking it seriously and that you're doing the best you can with this.
Yeah, for me it was has been a humbling experience because I went from being my own boss and having some success to now having bosses who I'm back in the correction phase,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm having trouble. It's very military with like step by step instructions, and I'm having trouble really retaining things, and I'm feeling very stupid. So I've had to really, yeah, just eat some crow. I don't know what you call it. Like really be vulnerable and say,
Mm-hmm.
listen, I know I've asked a million questions, but I don't understand. Like, I learn better by you showing, not just telling. When you're blah, blah,
Yes.
blah, I'm yeah, 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 but none of it's sticking.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could just show me, and I can learn kinetically. And I've been labeled pain in the arson. My last name is Arson. So, but also I found, yeah, because I'm like, I don't understand. Excuse me, sir. Could you
Right.
explain it and show me? But I also think in doing that, they're realizing that I'm not just ignoring, and I'm not
Mm.
I care. I'm in this. I really do. I just need a little bit of like workarounds and to do
Yeah.
things differently. So it's embarrassing at first. I had to say like, "Oh, I have ADHD and I'm having trouble remembering all of these steps. Can you show me?" And I make up
Mm-hmm.
little songs to remember it. And I feel like I'm trying to, am I winning them over, doctor? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's better
But
when you
here,
can just be really honest.
yeah, because here's the thing: the truth comes out anyway, right? When you don't do the thing right, ta-da, the truth has been revealed, right? So like you're not keeping any secrets there. But the thing about it is, if you present it as, hey, this would be really helpful, like I will do a better job on this if you can show it to me this way instead of that way, right? Most bosses or coworkers or customers or whatever, like they want you to do a good job. They want you to give them the right thing. So it is in their interest to do it that other way. Now, obviously, they can't be working too hard at you
Right.
getting it. Like you got to show them that you're working hard at it. But to just sort of say it in a just standard, like don't over apologize, don't make a big thing of it, don't get weird, just like, hey, this would be really helpful to me if we could do it like this. You know what, this really works, and then I'm gonna totally like crush it for you.
Yeah. And don't make it weird. I probably make it weird. Okay. I probably make it weird, but I for surely make it weird. But I do think
but
I
only in
had
the most
to
entertaining and
I
endearing way.
had to humble myself and allow myself, like, okay, they might think I'm stupid. I might look stupid. It is a little embarrassing to admit, like, and also I ask questions, and I had to say, like, I'm not asking because I think you're doing it silly, or it's just
Mm,
it. If you explain the why, I'll retain it better. And
yeah.
so it
But that's an important point to get across. Like, I'm not being oppositional and trying to get out of this. Like, I'm asking because I want to understand this. I want to do a good job for you. I want you to be happy with what I give you. Like, if they wonder about why you're asking, that's the problem, right?
yes.
It's the wrong assumption.
And I think a lot of my other coworkers, talking to them, they also didn't fully understand, but it's embarrassing to admit this.
Yes.
Right. So then we're all just kind of pretending we know what's going on. But when we're brave enough to admit that we're not perfect and we don't
Hmm.
always understand everything, or we need to look at things or be told or taught a different way, I think it helps everyone. So I'm encouraging my listeners, if you're struggling in a workplace with like rules that don't really make sense or systems that are like, oh, it's the drudgery, I feel like it is okay to be vulnerable and say, I'm struggling with this. Is there another way we can do this? Or is there
Hmm.
another way you can explain it to me so that everybody wins?
Yeah. And this idea that other people are being cowards and not asking is a real thing, right? That, like, I'm sure there are people who are like, oh, thank God she asked. I didn't want to. I'm glad she did. You know?
But there's also lots of times that everybody else gets it but me. But that is
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
My brain just works a little bit differently. All right, so good. I'm excited. I can't wait to finish reading. I'm about a quarter of the way through the ADHD Productivity Manual. I'm feeling very inspired. I was inspired to start going to bed a half an hour earlier, even though I don't want to. I'm such a night owl.
Right.
That's something you talk about so much, the
Yeah.
profound impact sleep has on the
Yeah.
brain.
It
So
really does. It's such a boring topic, but it's so important. God.
do it. And I should exercise daily too. Fine, fine,
Oh,
fine. I just needed you to tell me. But yeah, there is no hack. I don't think there's like this one secret that when you finally get it, I think it's having self-awareness and being really forgiving to yourself and just trying these little steps and celebrating every tiny win and stacking that win on yesterday's win. And then tomorrow you get to stack another win. And then before you know it, you're like, look at this amazing tower I made.
yeah.
Awesome.
And that is exactly it, right? It's show up and keep showing up, right? Whether you had a great day yesterday or a terrible day yesterday, same thing, keep showing up, right? Just keep showing up. What is the next good thing I can do here?
I love it. And my listeners today, they showed up, they did stuff, they got things done, and they learned more
Hmm.
about ADHD. And I think, if nothing else, even if you don't have ADHD, I hope my listeners have a little bit more compassion for those around them that do, maybe even small children who are
Hmm.
constantly being corrected. I think the more we can talk about it and the more we can just like, pull back the curtain and say, listen, this is what's going on, the better everybody, like just the better the whole ADHD community will get.
Yep,
So
I agree.
I love it. Thank you. Okay, so let my listeners know how they can follow you because you're always giving such incredible advice online, and where they can get your new book.
Sure. So, my main website, my books and podcast website is adultadhdbook.com. And, the book is releasing on like May 7th, and the audiobook is coming out in mid May. I had a lot of fun doing that. I was definitely hoarse by the end of that, last second day, let me tell you. But I think it'll be super cool. So it'll be on, all the places that you buy books. So I'm really excited to get it out there and to see what people think about it.
I'm excited. It's a very good book. So I appreciate it so much. I appreciate you sending me that copy. And I'll put links to that in the show notes down below if you want to get that now. And thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, everyone listening at home. I'm proud of you for all the stuff you got done today. And I'll see you next time.